There we go.
Good, all right.
Now we're going live. Technical problems. Yeah.
I have to repeat everything you said, no.
Yeah, so. Yeah, that, buffers I think are great, looking at the LID techniques and making sure that. I can provide you a sheet, what we use, for that a landowner could fill out and apply an LID technique as they do development in the watershed, in the shoreline zone. And making sure that that's a requirement, in there, in the ordinance. I think that would be, an important one.
LID,
Yeah, low impact development,
okay.
And what is SFR you can refer to?
single family residential.
Right, okay, thank you.
So I think those, some of those might be an example of what you could do.
Was that your number one target when you started doing this, or was the septic the number one target?
So the target for us was septic at first, because as we started the conversation, Auburn's ordinance required, 36 inches of horizontal separation to what they call a limiting factor. If you talk about septic systems, I'm sure Dave Rowe talked a little bit about this. It's where the seasonal, high water table comes up and creates modeling in the soils, and that's what site evaluators look for. And so, but they had 36 inches, which is well above what we do in the shoreline zone and in the watershed. But then they set the system 1 foot below the existing grade. So you have essentially 2 feet from the limiting factor of the seasonal high water table, but you're taking the really good soils away.
Why did they set it a foot below the existing grade?
That was before I got there, I don't know.
That seems like a strange thing to do.
I was hired to fix it,
Yeah.
so,
And Dave Roque explained to us that he advocates basically above ground, because the natural soil is something that if you don't disturb it, it can.
it's excellent.
It can be good for the phosphor or trapping phosphorus. And I guess he indicated, and here, my question to you would be, if there's an existing system where you can't build it above ground and it's existing, let's say, and you need to redo it, is there something you can do down, to put in fine soils or do something to like
So-
duplicate that original?
There's always something, there is, as we, if we looked at some of this additional information here, so this is that 7.5 minute series map, this is our whole entire watershed here that we're looking at. But anything that we have 400-foot buffers, and this is just an example kind of tying into your question. We have situations where there's a small lot, it was an existing lot, might have been there since the 40s. There's nothing that they can do to meet the setback requirements, so we always try to look at the greatest extent practical. What can we do? We work with the site evaluator, and we just apply some common sense and try to do what we can. I think that in most cases, you can get the system you can put in a replacement system that is better than what's there. And I think you can put a lot of the systems as high up as you can. Some of these spots, I know the low lying areas, real flat areas, you may only have like 9 inches, but adding additional material like we do 12, we only require 12 inches now in Auburn, but what we'll do is we add 2 feet of material, parent material. That the basis of the design was in a dry swale that DEP did, we used for LID, low impact development techniques. And then we worked with Dave Roque for some more fines. We could certainly share that profile with you, with the specification that we have. That could be a recommendation. So, right now, the shoreline zone requires 15 inches of horizontal separation. Under chapter 1000 and under chapter 241 of the subsurface wastewater rules. It's so you could add, you could have a requirement of 20 inches. So in the case where, say you've got a lot of bedrock and it's an existing system, you could have some of that media put in there, so you get that. You can get that biomap really to occur and get what you need out of the septic system, so.
But to do that, you have to raise the tank as well. You have to raise the whole system up in order to get the flow out the T.
In some instances, you might have to go to a pumping station. You might have to pump. And that might be a little disappointing for folks, but I think you need to look at any and every option there is out there. As a designer for septic systems, we always try to go gravity. I mean, that's always the intent. But there's been, lots of times where, particularly in the watershed, because just in the shoreline zoning, because if you think about it, it's always downgrade, it's not like you're gonna put the septic system in front of the camp, right? It's always usually in the back. We did a lot of designs when I worked for Al, we did H20 loaded concrete chambers. And we did them under the parking lot, because the lots are so small, and we did a lot that way, and they perform really well that way. And you could add the media, raise that up, but a lot of times, some of those older systems, it was a tank, or it was just, maybe even a gray system. It just went into literally a 50-gallon tank, crushed stone, and just dumped in there. Gray water was dumped in there. We replaced lots of those in Oakland. They got a grant, we're talking 20 years ago, 25 years ago. When Bob Ellis was there, as code enforcement officer. But, so there's ways to do it. As the designer, you always wanna try to, you do wanna go gravity, but the topography on lakes and on the waterfront is difficult for that. And it's just part of living on the lake,
Do you have a time limit when they have to do the fix by? And do you fine them if they don't do the fix, if they have?
So the replacement. So I'm gonna get to that. Let's go here really quick.
So one quick question, which is not really apropos of anything you talked about. When were you with Al Hubston?
From 1999 to 2010,
Okay.
7, somewhere in there. That's good.
May I interrupt for a moment? Are you gonna be done by 5?
Yes.
Okay, all right, because they'll lock up at 5, and I noticed that Hans left, and I wasn't sure.
Okay, we'll make sure we're.
You, okay,
Okay, so
I'll
we'll-
let them know out front, because I'm leaving.
You're not
I
gonna
gotta
give
pick
us
up
the
my
keys?
granddaughter.
Who will lock up
Excuse me? They'll lock up up front
at 5?
at 5. They'll be out of here promptly at
And-
5, believe me.
And they'll let us out, they won't.
Right, I
Travis,
just,
and-
yeah, I just want to communicate with them.
We'll
and
just
make
be
sure.
hard stop at 5, okay.
Okay, all right, very good, thank you.
Used to have the keys. Yeah, Hans usually is.
They can always just go out that door right there.
Okay, where are we?
So, we're talking a little bit more about septics. We had a question about replacement or inspections and how quickly they gotta respond. I think there's a bunch of information there that's front loaded that I think we probably would wanna talk through before we got to the enforcement piece. The enforcement piece is we handle that on a case-by-case basis. There is programs out there through the DEP, there's the community grant program for those that are, that we call LMI, low to moderate income folks. So there's grant money out there, we have access to CDBG money out there, that help people that not necessarily can't afford it. If we did an inspection and found that there was a faulty tank or something like that, we'd help them out, we'd figure out a way to do it. But just a little bit about costs, inspection. They're running about $325 to $375 to do an inspection, just kind of the back of the napkins call. I did actually do a little bit of work, keeping Belgrade in mind. There's, Stanley Septic Service, which is in Fairfield, so these guys are pretty accessible to here. They'll do an inspection and pump the tank for $450. I thought that was a pretty good deal. So,
Just to interrupt you, because I had Stanley come out to my property because I was interested in this.
yeah,
They had no ability to test whether you have a biomat. And I had to have Dave Rowe come with an auger. He was suggesting you come and hire a backhoe. So there is really some gaps in this system
Where do you put the backhoe? Right
A
through the
backhoe,
field?
a backhoe for what?
to determine whether the system, my leach field had a effective biomat.
But wasn't he talking about just using an auger and going down, you know?
No, he was not. Stanley did not have that
He
capacity.
said Dave did, but Stanley wanted.
I know, oh, you're saying Stanley was the
Yeah.
one who was talking about.
Stanley
the
didn't
back-
have it. Dave did. Dave came out and did it.
I see, but is it Stanley who
Okay.
suggested the backhoe?
Yes,
Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood, I thought you said.
I may have, sorry.
I thought you meant Dave did, okay,
So
yeah,
So Dave did it with an auger
yeah, he talked about that last time.
and you,
He-
and you.
he- And he's told me that he could train people. Dave is,
Yeah, he talked about that here last time.
I wasn't there, but he could train people to go out and determine this rather easily.
Yeah, even you perhaps.
Oh, yeah.
I signed up, he's coming to my house on
yeah,
Saturday.
so we have that watershed just to kind of go with that, to add to that conversation. Stanley will be coming to our watershed, protection grant as we roll it out for training. And yes, we will be providing, that training on how to do that. I'm sure we'll probably hire Dave Rowe to teach our,
Yeah.
our septic inspectors to look at that, how to do it, not so intrusively, I guess.
How many septic-
It's a background.
how many septic inspectors do you have?
What's
How
that?
many septic inspectors do you have?
So there's a state list.
So Stanley's a pretty old school.
It's just a state,
Okay.
there's,
Okay,
so we're gonna do some public outreach. We're hoping that we can get some people to come in and get licensed.
So the town is not doing the inspections. You're requiring property owners to provide the certifications?
That's, well, the property, we'll vet all the inspectors. We'll have a list of certified people once this rolls out. We're not gonna roll this out probably until, it's looking like next year as we do all the training and stuff like that, but, yeah. So just kind of some information we're doing, the first year we'll do 50, it's gonna cost about $21,000. This is the whole watershed now, not just shoreline zone. And then we're gonna put the burden of the cost on the ratepayers. So a ratepayer for the first year, their bill would go up $1.18. So it's pretty small, payment to.
So the
to a
20,000 plus dollars, that's for what?
That's for all the inspections.
So that's for inspection.
That's for the inspections,
Okay.
for the first, 50. And then,
Why are you doing inspections outside of the shoreline zone?
so we look at things watershed wide. It's not just if we look at non-point source pollution, you gotta look way beyond
Okay.
the shoreline zone. The shoreline zone is only 0 to 250 feet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, fair enough, yeah.
So,
so how
yeah,
are you gonna pick these 50? You're gonna do what Dave says, which is older systems prior to 1974?
well, so we're gonna, here's a map right here. So this is, the year one is right around the lake. I don't know if everybody can see that. And then, year two is here. This is called the basin. It's a very critical area for us. we get a lot of impacts from outside the town, year 3, 4, and then 5. That kind of just splits it up. You know, as we roll out the inspections, we're right around 50 in the first 2 years to get the program kind of squared away. And then year 3, 4, and 5, we're up around 75 inspections.
So do you need the cooperation of the homeowner to do that?
Absolutely.
And how do you get that for everybody in that?
So it's a requirement. There's, you know, the last slide here it talks about enforcement. We have it written into the ordinance. Now, if you wanna make sure that, if you wanna make a recommendation, all these things has to tie back and should have legal counsel look at this. You should have an attorney look at it. But you want strong language in there for code enforcement to be able to enforce these rules and regulations. And then I can show you that, you know, again, if you wanted to recommend something. This would be, you know, some very strong language that enforcement right here, the city planning permitting department shall have authority to enforce all requirements of this division in accordance with their section. So you have to reference the section under the enforcement piece, under their ordinance. You know, this is the kind of stuff that I could help you guys out. This is what you gotta pick out, this is what you gotta do.
The ratepayer is someone who's getting water from you, right?
That's correct.
But we
Yeah.
don't have that situation. We can't do, you know, this.
Yeah, I was just giving you.
We have taxpayers instead.
Yes. You got taxpayers. So, yeah, I mean, that could equate to something on their, you know, tax bill that, you know, could really amount to, I don't think it's gonna be a lot.
But you don't have any law right now that requires certification. It's sort of going backwards, you know, in a circuitous way that you're gonna have to have it inspected in order basically to get water.
I guess I'm not quite sure what. you
Well,
meant
you're
by
saying. I imagine the town is providing water to the property owner, right?
That's correct, yep, it's actually through LawPac, which is their kind of environmental organization, they're taking it.
I imagine there's some language in that if the property owner interferes with the delivery of the water, you know, they're not gonna get water, which is if they don't allow somebody on their property to
Well,
the septic is operable.
No, so the inspection is part of the ordinance, so they're not in compliance with the ordinance, and so there is the, you know, 80K rule for enforcement.
Okay, got it.
So, yeah, that's how that would work. It's interesting because LawPac doesn't have any authority to enforce the ordinances, right? So it's the city that enforces the ordinance. and
I
not-
see. Okay,
Not the environmental group. But they'll be working with us hand in hand to roll out the you know, kind of the public outreach piece. And the training, and the information to all the people that are in the watershed. I think it's important, you know, getting the information out there and having a robust. Everything's gonna be sent out certified mail, things will be mailed out. The mayor will write a letter to everybody, everybody will get this, they'll know where their home lies and what year they're gonna be responsible for doing their inspection. And then we'll have within each of these zones, we're gonna have public outreach, we'll have septic socials, you know, we'll try to. We can't have booze with the city, but we're gonna certainly have food. and
septic
we're-
socials, okay.
Yeah, that's a big thing, is having a social where people come over, have some food, and then have a demonstration of these things. What goes into a septic inspection, people get to see it,
So
and experience it.
does this have to pass the voters?
It doesn't have to pass the voters because this is a ordinance, under our ordinance, it requires a recommendation from the planning board, and then as long as it has two readings with council, and as soon as it's read through council, then it's passed.
So it doesn't, so with us, we have to, it has to go, to the, in front of voters.
Yep.
Somewhat.
Yeah, and I think that's why we, you know, part of this is that we, you know, once we get. You know, once you get it figured out what we wanna do in the shoreline zone, I think there has to be some significant public outreach and public meetings.
Absolutely.
In how this is applied and we don't wanna make it really burdensome for people. But we, you know, at the same time, we want them to, you know, kind of latch on to the, you know, to the value. We can tie in the economics of, you know, lakefront property and the value of water quality and how that relates to their home and the resale value and just all of that and kind of link. You wanna come up with a kind of a good mission statement to sell them on the idea of it, to get the voters, right, to get the right amount of voters. And then start with the simplest things. Most, you know, like the 50 feet to 25 is a very simple thing. You know, try to do it where everybody can understand it, you know.
Right.
And
Excuse me,
maybe
John, I have to cut out a few minutes early here. Are you able to share your presentation with the group by chance?
Yeah, I'll send it to Charlie. Charlie's got a version of it already, I believe.
I do.
Yeah,
It'd be good to get the new one and,
all right.
and I've shared it with Pat, but I'm not sure if it went out to the group.
It did.
Okay.
Did everybody get it?
Mhm.
Okay.
I have a
Okay.
question. Are we open to questions now, or, I don't want.
No, go ahead, Paul.
So one of our concerns is the external loading of phosphorus in the watershed as it comes from erosion. And can you speak to, what you're doing for erosion controls, and do you have any ordinances? For example, to the situation if a private property owner within the shoreline zone is causing erosion to into the lake.
Yeah, that's a good question, Paul. So, you know, tying back this phosphorus requirement, creating a phosphorus piece in the shoreline zone is probably gonna be your best way to do that. And it's either addressing the erosion that's on the site to allow the addition to occur, or it's putting a buffer in it, you know, or it's, you know, the erosion could lead into implementing a permanent BMP like a rain garden or dry swale. Those are some of the things that you could use the ordinance to leverage, getting at some of those erosion issues on those sites. You know, that's what we do often. There's always people saying, I wanna cut a tree, I wanna do this, I wanna do that on the shoreline zone. We're having them put buffers in. You know, you could cut the tree, but you're gonna put a buffer in, you're gonna put, you know, you're gonna put hostas in, you're gonna put low brush blueberries. I wanna see ECM in the front.
But where does that authority come from? Do you have an ordinance that allows you to be the boss in that way, or
Yeah.
does it make it illegal?
Under our phosphorus ordinance, anything under 200 square feet, we can apply that. Under the shoreline zoning, there's a canopy requirement even under chapter 1000 that allows you to make sure that the canopy is the same. And to do that, you can implement plantings to replace cutting of trees in the shoreline zone. So we're constantly doing that. But we apply it right at the lake. We want it as close to the lake as we can. We understand people want views of the lake, that's why we're all there. But low bush blueberries, hostas, that's canopy stuff, that slows water down, traps phosphorus getting onto the site. You know, it's really that first 25 feet from 0 to 25, that's the riparian zone, right? You know, from a scientific standpoint, that's where all the critical habitat is and where a lot of the erosion can happen. You know, if you talk about erosion and how erosion occurs, the physics of it, Peter Kalen probably talked about this. Peter and I had lengthy discussions over the years about this. It's that overtopping effect. And creating that initial rilling, going over the embankment and getting some plantings there that slows that process down so you don't get any type of erosion. I think that's our best protection.
John, most of our shoreline zone properties are old, probably built in the seventies and eighties. They've already cleared the trees. And one of our concerns is how can we retrofit that? And we talked to Maine Municipal Association, and I don't think we had any success with that. Is, but we really need to kind of, not just new construction, but what is the
Yeah,
already.
if somebody has a lawn, let's say, that is running down to the lake. What can we do to get them to put in a buffer?
So again, we could do it ordinance wise with any kind of addition. You could have it down to, you could do 120 square feet. I mean, just putting a shed is gonna require them to put.
So you need a trigger event.
You need a trigger.
You can't just, say, you've gotta, we see you have a lawn, your neighbors said you have a lawn, you need.
We gotta get, at the city, we have to have a reason to get on the property, and usually that's a new shed, cutting the trees. Any one of these events can spur that
Okay.
discussion about a buffer. The voluntary compliance, can be driven through 319, right, 319 grants.
Okay,
Where they, the BRCA or Seven Lakes Alliance, they write a grant and they get 319 money. And they can incentivize that, all right, if those people that aren't doing anything and have a situation, will pay for 60% or. of the-
50-50.
Well, 50-50 or, whatever it is. To put that buffer in there, we'll pay, and we'll supply the manpower to do it through the.
have you seen anybody,
Conservation Board.
have you seen anybody that's, countrywide, is any municipality saying that if you comply with something similar to our Lake Smart, something like that. You get a discount on your property taxes and other people pay more, so it basically incent homeowners to do something to create a buffer and be Lake Smart. Have you seen anything like that?
No, there's no abatement like that. I can tell you there's strict rules on, valuations, from an assessor standpoint. From state statute that would really limit that.
Would limit that, you think?
Yeah, and that would be problematic. It would. I think the best way to do it is people always wanna do more, and that more could be something very simple. It could be replacing the deck. The code enforcement, they replace the deck, set of stairs, something that requires an inspection. It's over a certain square footage, boom, it's gonna trigger that
Okay.
requirement.
Interesting.
A small shed, cutting of a tree, these things constantly occur. They constantly
Right.
occur.
My question originally was, do you have any law in the books? There would be a triggering event if an erosion event. In other words, I have a situation where I'm the road commissioner road and a butter has to the configuration of the land, the water gathers, we get a road washout of $6,000, $7,000 cost to repair. Is there anything that makes it illegal or requires the property owner to fix the erosion event?
So, you should have a good road association and tie that into your deed covenants in the road. You have to get compliance of that. Some of the older roads are harder to go back and get that, to get a road association established, but there should be covenants for payment requirements should be equally distributed among the folks that are on that road. There's manuals out there that do that. We wrote that back in 2006 or 8 for the DUP. There's a road manual with all the examples on that. I wrote probably 60 or 70% of that, 15, 20 years ago, but, there is a process. It's hard to get compliant. It's those new developments where the planning board should be in the ordinance. Again, going back to if you're looking at new developments, should be in the ordinance that they have a tight road association. And that's a requirement of the planning board for the subdivision approval. But it's hard for some of these older lake associations and, you know, you talk to a lot of people, it's always the same person that does the work and kind of spearheads all the work and, you know, politely asks their neighbors for money, but it's never a great
Have
conversation.
you thought of also using property transfers as a trigger for upgrading standards?
Yeah, so that's a great point. So that is in our ordinance, for the inspection piece, for the septic inspection, property transfer. It requires, them to submit a, septic inspection.
Could you also have a buffer plan as part of our property transfer?
You could do that.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's outside the box thinking, I like that. I might use that.
Yeah,
Would that be the new owner's responsibility or the old owner's responsibility?
presumably the new, but you know, you have maybe a year to establish it, so it's not onerous, and then, like you say, put it in the deed, so it doesn't go away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and recording that buffer in the registry.
I
is-
like that idea.
That is key, that is key. I can give you guys language for that, I can share, deed and covenants. For that we use.
And it's past legal review, which is also helpful. Yeah.
And a lot of it's standard language, so the DEP requires this stuff, if you're doing a subdivision, like, so we're not reinventing the wheel here, we're just using, you know, what people usually at a bigger scale, but we're trying to kind of onesie twosie for the individual landowner, we're just.
And that's what most of the development is around here, is the SFR, the single family.
Yeah, and it's the cumulative effects of that over time that, you know, degrade, you know, just the degradation of the lake and
Right.
it adds up over time, so. Yeah, so those are some of the strategies.
Do you have a sense, as to, the percentage of phosphorus coming from, lack of buffer, septic, road erosion, you know, do you have any sort of a, you know, what's the low hanging fruit, I guess is?
Yeah, so that's a good question, and that's part of that makes some of the discussion difficult in our community. Because septics is not, if you look at just septics alone, it's not very high, I don't think, based on all the watershed surveys and watershed-based plans that people put together. It's really the big NPS sites that are out there, the 1 or 2 roads, you know, the ditches are really bad and it's going into the lake. And then there's the internal loading as well, so what's existing in the lake.
Yeah, that's.
Well, that varies a lot from lake to lake,
Right,
both,
and varies on your flush rate. you
Does
know.
that also influence the standards of your road crews, the city employees, and upgrading their work to reduce erosion from town roads?
Yeah, we're focused on that all the time, we're actually,
Cause that alone would be good precedent setting around
yeah,
there.
we got a meeting with DOT this week, tomorrow, actually, we're gonna be focusing on that, and looking at Route 4 in particular, that's a big impact on,
Do they like clean up their sand after the season, that sort of thing? I mean,
Yeah.
because.
yes, we're not allowing them to use, we're really light salt, light sand, we have areas where they're doing, additional plowing in the wintertime to really scrape the ground down, not rely heavily on salt and sand.
DOT is doing that for you?
We're working with DOT planning, yeah, and their environmental office and identifying these areas as critical areas, habitat areas.
Really?
Yep,
It's very interesting. I didn't know that they would do that.
oh yeah, Yeah, they have a vested interest in it.
We have a carrot and a stick. The stick is that, if you have to go to a filtration, for Lake Auburn, then it becomes, very expensive, right?
Yeah, $20 to $40 million expensive.
Yeah, so that's like, okay, so that is easy to explain.
But, you've got a great resource here. You got the lakes.
I was gonna say, the tax base just in Belgrade
Oh, I-
for lakes is hundreds
I'm afraid we have to kind
at
of
risk.
wrap it up.
Okay, we have to wrap it up.
I talked to,
Well, that was fantastic. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
hopefully we
Thank you
covered
so
it.
much.
we did a great, it was wonderful.
Thank you very much. And you've opened the door for further, help, so, which we really appreciate because we're sort of.
The time frame, I think, is worth your knowing too. The town's trying to do something to be ready for next March, potential.
Okay.
Well, I don't, yeah,
It may not be a complete solution, but